2018 was a really interesting year for Gibson. The last year before their bankruptcy, they were doing so many cool limited edition models. This one is from Gibson Memphis and is known as the Big Block Retro. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. In my quest to document all the craziness from that year, I had to reach out to the help of ZenMarket, who's the sponsor of tonight's episode. We'll learn a little bit more about them later on, because this one came to me from Japan. But the Big Block Retro, it's basically trying to be a hot rod and blend in some classic car culture into a 335, as well as some historic semi-hollow guitars. So the one we're talking about tonight is known as Wood Rose Metallic. It's kind of a muted pink, kind of a light lavender color. But to complement Wood Rose Metallic, they also had Emerald Green Metallic and a straight up classic white. The official marketing sheet states that 50 of them were made. I'm not sure if that's 50 each color or 50 in the entire run. However, if you look at something like the modern Flying V, it states 33, and I know for a fact that that was 33 of each. So I'm fairly confident that means it was 50 of each hue, 150 in total. Besides the colors, what else are these things doing that's different from a regular 335? Well, the name implies Big Block Retro. Look at this. Straight up mother of pearl inlays in the large block formation like you would find on an ES-335. However, it still has a regular rosewood fretboard, and you don't find that combination very often ever within Gibson's literature. So that's what kind of makes this Memphis-made 335 special, because the headstock is all 335. Just the wooden materials 335, but this is 355. And then, hey, what have we got here? 3-ply binding on the top. That's my favorite spec out of the 345. So they're just blending all kinds of cool things there. Another difference to know about is look at the horns. These are a little bit sharper than usual. For the sake of comparison, here's another 335 in my collection, the Jim James signature. See how bulbous the cutaway is? Whereas when you come over here, rather than being super rounded, it comes down a little bit deeper. That's something that you have to be really well versed in the semi-hollows to fully appreciate, but apparently that goes all the way back to the 50s and is part of the whole retro vibe of this one. And another thing you probably noticed, stock cream plastics, except for reflector knobs down here. You don't find that very often on a 335, especially not a multi-ply cream pickguard. I can't think of another model that has something like that. That just matches our 3-ply binding perfectly. And my favorite feature out of the Gibson Memphis plant on their semi-hollows is the F-hole truss rod cover. It's just such a cool look. But besides cosmetics, something that I did not know to expect on this, the edges of the neck are so beautifully rolled, and I would say it's relatively skinny. I can't wait to take those dimensions. This feels like a well-worn-in player, even though it's a fairly newer guitar. But another thing that makes this special is this was the last year of Gibson Memphis before they shut it down and eventually made all the 335s, etc. in Gibson USA in Nashville. Gibson Memphis also had slightly different cases from the Gibson Nashville. Like, they look very similar. However, the logo was just ever so slightly different in its color and style. And the interior of their case is actually kind of a nice dark charcoal, but these were still TKL made in Canada at that time. But as far as case candy, it looks like this one did initially ship to Japan because we have the Japanese version of the owner's manual. But here's a look at our COA, labeling it as a Gibson Memphis guitar. So this might not be the absolute craziest 2018 model, but when you really get nitpicky on all the details and specs, they did a lot of cool stuff here. Some other cool models from this era include the SG Flying Eagle, the Rose Tattoo 335, Year of the Dog Les Paul, or even the Moonless Night Les Paul Custom. But before we go ahead and throw this one onto the workbench, I told you I got this out of Japan through the help of ZenMarket. Let's learn about them now. ZenMarket can help you shop exclusive Japanese stores to buy anything that you could possibly want from Japan, not just guitars. You can get anything from Amazon, Rakuten, Mercari, Digimart, or any of these other places. So for example, if you wanted one of the Japan exclusive Hello Kitty items, these guys can help you get it. If you wanted to scoop up this deal on a 50s plain top standard for $1,500, they can make it happen. Or even if you wanted this cool Pikachu clip-on tuner, you can get your plush and cards, video games, etc. from these guys too. If it's in Japan, these guys can help you. And you can visit them using my channel supporting link, which will be in the description, and you can use sign-up code TROG to get 1,000 free Zen points. If you're curious about their pack job, here's how this one arrived to me. It had cardboard edge protection protectors, and it ended up being at least a triple-walled box. It had a bunch of void filler with tons of bubble wrap. The entire case was even wrapped. This was certainly a premium pack job that I was very impressed by. So if you need something out of Japan, give ZenMarket a try. Inside the big block, let's go ahead and start with our pickups. The backside just has a single decal, and it reads patent applied for, so it could be a Burstbucker, it could be a 57 Classic, but no, the stock set in this one is the MHS humbuckers, which stands for Memphis Historic Spec. Occasionally, you'll still see Gibson using up old inventory of these in the demo shop and mod collection. If I remember correctly, you'd also find these in like the ES LPs that they were making around 2016, so we'll have to hear how those sound today, because nowadays we're rocking the calibrated T-type set in these style of guitars, but it reads 7.97 in the bridge, neck position 7.53, and the middle just for fun 387. But check out the craftsmanship in our neck pickup cavity. It's a little sloppy right there as far as the paint work, but the neck tenon's nice and tight, at least on the edges right there. And this is crafted just like any other ES-335. It's a maple poplar maple sandwich that is pressed into shape. So even though this looks like a carved top, it's just pressed into that. Same thing is true for the back. They also laminate your edges. And then being a 335, you have to have a center block. That's what helps cut down on feedback. But sometimes 335s can still be pretty chunky. So what they did for this model is they chambered out the center block. So not only is your guitar semi-hollow, but even your center block is semi-hollow in a roundabout way. But you can also see that they trim away a lot of the center block right here to fish the wires and all the other good electronics through. But after the top is pressed on, it is joined with the spruce bracing. And that's what you're seeing down here, just the bottom side of that. But to learn more, let's grab our endoscope real quick. This is actually a really good lighting situation. You can see those three layers perfectly before we get to your spruce. But then you do get the continuation of the maple center block down here. Doesn't look like the best craftsmanship we've ever seen out of Gibson, but sometimes these semi-hollows do get messy. But as we enter the belly of the beast, you can see your mahogany curved edges along here. And hey, that's kind of interesting. I don't think normal 335s do that. Aren't they continuous? But since this one has a much sharper cutaway to it, they have to utilize two different bands. Then we can continue our look down here to where we start to get to our electronics. Now what I found interesting about this pickup set is they actually say they're utilizing 550K pots in this model. And you get your orange drop capacitors, which those are commonplace in Gibson nowadays, but that was considered an upgrade back in this era. But right over here we can get a quick peek at the continuation of our maple center block right before our output jack. And then you can see your spruce bracing and how it joins it onto the back, as well as a little bit on the top there. Going inside of our bass F-hole, we can see our Gibson Memphis tag. It reads Big Block Retro 2018 ES-335. Then we've got our serial number dating it to the 19th day of 2018. So this was a very early production in that year. But in this F-hole, we see more of the same as far as the center block, spruce bracing, curved edges. And up in our cutaway over here, yep, that's just a small little section they do there. But hey, that's actually some pretty cool figuring in the maple right there at the top. I'm not gonna lie, some of the fine detail craftsmanship is pretty poor on the F-holes on how they routed it out. You can see it's rather quite chattered in many different areas. And then that gets painted over in black, or is just left bare. Here's the other side F-hole really getting in its face. And to be fair, from a couple of feet away it looks just fine, but even in our regular camera situation, you can definitely notice it. And just remember, I said 2018 Gibson was fun with the limited editions. I didn't say it was known as Gibson's best quality time. Some things you just have to learn to live with. Here's another defect I noticed. Our neck pickup ring is bending outward. Now sometimes that can just happen due to poor quality of pickup ring. That's especially common in the late 80s, early 90s. So to see it here on a 2018, a little bit surprising. Something to keep in mind if you're looking at one of them. The good news is even if that were to be down here and bends and then breaks, technically, this is the only part you need of a pickup ring, so it would just become a cosmetic thing where you'd have to swap it out if it bothered you. Another thing to watch out for in this era is bubbling lacquer by the binding. Sometimes it's caused by a ding, other times it's just craftsmanship. Another common area for that to occur is where the pick guard actually joins to the body. So if you prefer to not have a pick guard on, just know you're going to have a little bit of delamination showing under there. But next up, our bridge and tailpiece. The bridge is a historically mounted ABR1 just with the posts in the body. And as far as the bridge itself, here's what it looks like. Reads Gibson ABR1. But the tailpiece is really strange on this model. Here's what the stud looks like. And you can see the bushing within the body gets gets covered over in paint and it stands slightly proud. But you can install it in to your desired height or deck it down. Then it has this little topper on it like a Pokeball. And what you're intended to do is put your bridge on like so, and then screw these on over top of the post. And then, after utilizing a screwdriver, or just hand tight, you can lock it into place. When I had first read in the spec sheet that it had a locking tailpiece, I thought, oh, okay, it's going to be like one of those Tone Pros type things. I bet the bridge will have it too. But no, tearing it apart, that's just its own unique thing. I think PRS utilizes something similar. So if you get one of these and you see that, and you're like, Gibson's never used anything like that, there you go. It is true. For this model, they did. Now, what's the point of having a locking bridge? When you're doing string changes and setups, this has no pressure on it, and it's not coming off. It's not going to slide down and ding your guitar up. It's going to be locked into place. Now, some guys also swear that by doing that, you're transferring the vibrations into the guitar more. So there's also a tone issue that you could debate on that. But kind of strange not to give us a locking bridge with the tailpiece. The tailpiece itself is crafted out of lightweight aluminum, so it matches your whole chambered out center block. That's the thing I notice about this guitar. It's very light in a good way, and that just comes from a sum of all the parts that make this thing up. But when researching this video, I thought, why did they choose black knobs? It's so strange when we have cream all the other plastics. But then it hit me. Our 3-ply binding is basically that. 2 thick black and cream layers with a very small cream one right before the wood rose metallic. So they were playing off of that, which is lots of fun. But here's the thing about utilizing a forwarding service. You gotta remember, their job is to ship the package of the item that you said you wanted. They're not the ones selling the guitar, so you kind of have to depend on the seller being truthful and honest about the condition, not having a headstock break, crack, or repair. You really got to look over those listings. This one actually ended up turning out quite fantastic. I wanted to polish up the top a little bit. The only thing that was really strange out of the case, I was hearing some rattling on the inside of the guitar. And what it ended up being is this must have been in a shop that was blaring the music on a heavy amp. Because guitars in those situations, all the fine parts seem to loosen up quickly. So this toggle switch was making a lot of noise, so I had to tighten that up, and like 3 of the 4 knobs were also loose. But these are all good to go now, so I would say this was a very pleasant experience importing this one from Japan. But it's just regular 2 volumes, 2 tones, 1 set for each pickup. There's our output jack and our 3-way toggle switch. But really pay close attention to this pick guard. That's just so cool. The thing I always hate about the cream pick guards is they just never look that good. They kind of seem cheap in my opinion. But when you do the multi-layering, it's sweet. So it's cream black cream with a large black and then an ultra thin cream on the back, which is technically a 5-ply pick guard. But then as an extra bonus, you get your black little mounting bracket right there to complete even more color fun. That's just a good look overall. But overall, I'm just so happy that I know an ES-335 model that has the 3-ply binding. There's something to it. It always calls my name when I see it, and I don't get enough 345s in to get to appreciate it. But another thing, when I was reading through the specs, I was like, okay, mahogany body, rosewood fretboard. Why didn't they just do ebony? That way they could say, oh yeah, we took a 355's fretboard and slapped it on here for you. Part of the spec sheet actually calls it dark rosewood. So they were trying to make it as dark as possible. And this is something that the shop who sold this to me did a fantastic job of polishing the frets and really making this fretboard nice and conditioned. I didn't even have to touch that this time. But this board just feels absolutely fantastic. And normally I would think real mother of pearl on the rosewood, it doesn't fit the usual Gibson aesthetic, but it works with the whole wood rose finish. But that is true mother of pearl. Usually when you do like standards and dots, you get acrylic. So that's a little bit of a fancy treatment here. But speaking of fancy treatments, the side markers are actually tortoiseshell color. So you get a little bit of red and black mixed in there. So when the light hits it just right, you see the red, and that matches very well with our kind of lavender finish. And you can also see some mild cracks by each fret. What that is fret sprout. However, with the binding, the frets actually can't sprout, and that's a very mild case. Most Gibsons have that after a few years, unless they're kept in perfect humidity. You can also see some mild finish checking by the nut. But this one has a very minimal fret wear. And our bone nut measures 1.656 inches. I was telling you guys, surprised this thing felt slim. Wow, only 2 at the 12, 0.84 first fret neck depth, and about 0.96 at the 12. Normally, I don't like narrow necks, but something about the combination of our rolled fretboard edge and all the other aesthetics, this one is calling my name. Here's that neck at the first fret and the 12th fret. Gets a little wider and rounded, but it's so round the shoulders just kind of disappear. Moving on to the headstock, unfortunately we do have some stand rash on this. A little bit of a burn, so that's unfortunate, but whatever. Can't return things to Japan for small things like that. It's too expensive. Roll with the punches, but at least the truss rod's perfect and in great shape. And here's a closer look at our truss rod cover. So the way they do these is they give you the illusion of the wide bevel edge like the historic ones, but it's actually completely contoured, so it's not exactly the same as the historics, but it looks very similar. But then they etch out the F-hole out of the top black layer, but they don't go all the way through to the white. That way you can still see some of the craftsmanship marks. I've always found these things incredibly cool. As far as the rest of the headstock, your Gibson mother of pearl logo, as well as the pearl crown, and then we've got quite large looking Grover tuners on here. Adds to the whole modified look to it. Although pink tipped Clusons could have been cool. Now we can move on to the top side. We do not have any back plates back here. Everything's fished through the bridge pickup cavity. So let's talk about the finish. Wood Rose Metallic. When I heard metallic, I thought I was going to get this and it would be like very sparkly, color shifting in different lights. And that's not necessarily the case. So that classic white within the lineup isn't that out of place. The metallic nature of this finish is very incredibly subtle. It really is more so a lavender color. However, depending on how far away you're standing from it, then it starts to appear more pink. It's a very cool hot rod car color. Now it looks like somebody has replaced our strap buttons with the newer style Schaller strap locks. I believe they call them the S-locks because they're all in one piece. The same thing is true down here, but I was hoping we wouldn't see any stand rash down here. It looks like this was just hanging up at a store for a while, and that's how it got the ones up top. But I decided to put some original style strap buttons on it. So that's what it would have looked like stock from the factory. But here you can see what I was saying about the S-locks. This is all one system. It's not a separate topper and a screw. It's just all together. Removing that felt pad, you can see there was a little bit of finish checking in the body from the installation of those other ones. But it looks like our neck joint is good on this one. But this one so far is actually in pretty good shape outside of just a light few surface coat scratches. And now we can move up the back side of the neck. That's really important on a 335. In the Demo Shop mod collection, we see it all the time. Cool colored finish and top and then natural neck. This one has the continuation of it all over. And here's the back side of our Milk Bottle Grover tuners. That is a vintage throwback. And we do indeed actually have the serial number impressed into the back of the headstock as well as in our sound hole sticker. And if you look just right, you can see the whole Made in USA 2018 branding as well. It's all there. While we're here, we might as well do a blacklight test. Everything looks good in our usual areas. Glad we got it out of that shop while we did. It's still fairly minor on the stand rash. Looks like our neck is good. And oh my goodness, what did they do to my... Just kidding. Oh, gotta have some fun with our new sponsor, right? Everything's good back here. But man, this thing's really cool under blacklight. I could see playing this at like some 50s diner. They've got black lights going. This thing just has its own vibe. Our inlays are glowing kind of cool too. No monkey business on this one. All said and done, Wood Rose Wilson weighs 7 pounds, 6.6 ounces. Man, that is a great weight for a 335. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how she sounds. The first thing I'm noticing about the Memphis Historic Spec pickups is they're very bright and chimey. That neck pickup nearly has that woody tone to it. Sometimes neck pickups can get muddy. But that one just rings true. Now our bridge pickup. The middle's usually pretty chimey, but this one's just extra. I really like the tones out of this one. It's a lot of fun. Definitely gives you rockabilly vibes with all the looks and the sounds. So, what are my final thoughts on this 2018 Memphis-made big block retro? It's even better than I was expecting it to be. I've always had a passing curiosity about these, but what always stopped me from buying one was A, couldn't find the one in the right condition, and even this one's not exactly perfect, and B, I just thought, that's kind of a lot of money to spend on something that just has a unique finish. But now that I've had it in my hands and realized, oh, okay, giant block inlays, that's different. It's actually still a rosewood fretboard, but most importantly, this really skinny neck profile, but at the same time still being rounded. It's quite comfortable. And that's coming from a guy who's pretty tall. And the MHS humbuckers, nothing to sneeze at, that's for sure. But the best feature of all has to be how light and resonant this one is. I've had my fair share of these 335s recently that are like nearly 10 pounds plus, and they're just not that nice to stand and play with for a long period of time. This one, it's got the right amount of weight, not too much, not too little. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope you guys did too. So once again, thank you to ZenMarket for sponsoring tonight's episode and getting me this guitar from Japan. If you're interested in a guitar in Japan, or anything at all, keep that in mind, anything in Japan. It's not just guitars. Feel free to check them out using the channel supporting link in the description. All right, troglodytes, I hope you learned something new, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.